Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, here to talk more match sim games, day 2 and day 3. And I'm here with a special guest from Supercoach Hub. We've got Joshy. JG, how are you, mate?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Keen to talk the match sim that's happened yesterday and today. There's a bit to talk about, and yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, mate, it's been fantastic. I think the last couple of years we've had to sort of find streams online that clubs are doing, or people with their smartphones taking
Oh,
pretty crappy recordings. So it's good to see Fox Footy and KO's got a bit on board this year, and it hasn't left us scratching our heads on how we're going to watch some of these match sim games.
yeah, absolutely. The camera angles are still a bit dodgy, somewhat, but you can still make out most of the players, and the commentary helps as well.
Yeah, and I think it's been a good opportunity to give even some of the umpires, I guess some of the cameramen, commentators who normally don't get these opportunities and a crack at it. And it's obviously good for us content creators out there who just love talking footy and Supercoach with each other. It gives us something even more to talk about this preseason. And I know there's plenty of fans. I think we had about 1,600 so far tune into Joe and myself from Centre Bounce for the Melbourne Richmond game, which was brilliant. So it just shows how many people out there, it's living and breathing footy and Supercoach in particular, and want to have a chat about these things.
Yeah, absolutely. The crowds have looked really good, actually, which kind of caught me off guard for preseason games and not even official ones. I myself am going to the Essendon Saints game tomorrow, which I'm pretty keen about, down at Moorabbin. And yeah, hopefully we can watch Steele get back to work because I'm hoping he can bounce back this year.
I should have it here off the top. What time is that game actually kicking off down at Moorabbin?
2 p.m. I believe. Gates open at 1. Game starts at 2 p.m.
My wife just asked me about it. She's a mad bomber, so there's a big chance I could be down there as well. So, in the fans who see this before the Saints Essendon game, if you're down and see either of us down there, say hello. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe our channels. As we get into that, where do people find you and find the Supercoach Hub boys?
Yeah, on YouTube and Spotify at Supercoach Hub, and then just on X at Supercoach_Hub. We've also got a Discord, which will be in the links of in the descriptions of the YouTube and also in the bio of Twitter.
Yeah, brilliant. And you've been doing God's work, mate, on X for the last couple of days, giving updates of this match sim. I know you and I don't necessarily agree with everything, like a lot of creators out there, which is great. Because I think if everybody agreed with every view on a player, it'd be pretty boring. But at the same time, there's a lot that we do agree about. So we'll get straight into it. Collingwood, North Melbourne yesterday, and it was a huge match. There were some big players missing, especially from the Pies' point of view. Naturally, Pendle's their superstar. On top of that, Sidey, Murphy, Myercheck, Howe, Maynard, Crisp, and Elliott, Darcy Moore, the captain. So you'll get that in these games where some of the teams who did finish higher up in the ladder will be resting some of these guys and working them back in later throughout the preseason. For North Melbourne, we had no Comden, Core, Dersmar, Greenwood, McDonald, Scott, Tucker, or Logue, but still plenty on show. We'll start off with North Melbourne because I think they're slightly the more relevant from this. They do have a lot of options that people are looking at. Who impressed you the most, mate?
I think it's going to be the same answer as everyone who watched that game, and it's Harry Sheezel. 42 disposals. He was doing whatever he wanted off that half back line and hitting up targets very, very well. Like his foot use was unbelievable, especially in a hot, heated game, which I think there was a bit of wind around as well. He was super impressive for me. Players like LDU and Simpkin and stuff were in a bit of cruise control, but I think Wardlaw was also impressive as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're completely right. Sheasel just did what he liked. Reminds me very much of Dacos last year. Didn't take a backward step. We know how talented he is.
Mm.
I think he's one of those guys that's going to be able to adapt to any position he plays, a bit like Dacos. And it showed that even with his stints in the midfield, still found the ball back at half back, no problems there. Just it was in a couple of really impressive passages of play, which I think Clarko will be saying to the boys, try to get the ball into his hand as much as possible because, I think Larky in particular will be very happy seeing the ball in Sheasel's hand because, the way that speed on the ball, which I think is the phrase these days. Get the speed on the ball, get those forwards leading up, and you're hitting the targets, and you can put forward pressure on. So, he did nothing more than, I think, make everybody think, do we need this guy in at probably D3? And I'm sure I saw a few people post that their teams with Sheasel back in. So 100% there. There was another young player in the back line. We won't get to the one yet that's transferred from Carlton. We'll talk about him in a second. But there was a young player who went pick 2 in the draft in Colby McKirkage. What did you think of his game, mate?
I thought he was really good. And looking at the stats post game, I think he had above 20 disposals. Again, someone else that was super clean by foot. And you mentioned someone who's coming from Carlton, Zach Fisher. We'll say his name now.
Yeah.
The one thing that I get worried about is, as you mentioned with Sheasel, they will probably want to feed him the ball. McKirch is down there as well. Is 3 Seagulls too much for North? And that's just one thing that worries me about Fisher, as well as his hamstring issues in the preseason, and also his injury-prone nature at the Carlton. But yeah, McKirch was really good. I think I tweeted early in the preseason how much he reminds me of Zach Merritt, the way he runs, the way he kicks, the way he looks even on the field. But yeah, I was really impressed by him. How about you?
Yeah, mate. I saw some comparing saying Sheasel 2.0, and I've heard the merit comparisons as well. And I think it's a bit of a merge between the two.
Yeah.
This kid, rightly so, went pick 2. There was no doubts about his foot skills. But I think the best thing was after getting the ball and dishing it off, he was still then running up the ground and providing a second option. His foot skills were just elite. So, and I think that compares to Fisher a little bit, though Fisher did hit quite a few targets later on. Early on, when there was a bit of heat in the game, which these preseason games early on there is, because the players, it's the first time they're playing against an opposition for some teams, nearly 6 months. And I felt that like in the Melbourne Richmond game, first quarter, and then it starts to die off as the game goes on. Fisher early struggled a little bit with that pressure, but then found a little bit more composure. And was it because a little bit more of the heat went out and he could get outside in that little bit free ball? And I think you're very right on how many Seagulls can you have, because they've still got to fit McDonald back in there. And there's no doubt he would come straight back in. So I think there's a possibility that it could even be Sheasel that comes further up the ground, or even one comes off the bench and they rotate it that way. But I don't know if Fisher's the complete lock that a few others are saying he is. And as you said, with those hamstring injuries, it is a bit of a concern. But definitely, if you're one of these few people that don't have McGurcher in, take this advice right now. Actually, just pause the podcast, throw him in, and then continue on, because this kid, even at 200K, is an absolute lock.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And you might be right about the heat affecting Fisher early, especially because I'm pretty sure it was his first 2 touches. One was a kick and it just completely missed the target. And then another was a handball, completely missed the target. But he did clean it up afterwards. So what do we read on that? I'm not too sure.
I want to see more.
Yeah.
I always find this with
Absolutely.
these match sims. You get a little bit more heat in the next round. Unfortunately, with Fisher being from North Melbourne, we're not going to get a free look at him for round 0, which I would have much preferred compared to some of these other mid. I feel like that for all mid prices. I really want the mid prices coming from round 0, because we actually get to see them in a proper AFL match, and you can make a really good judgment on them. Where some of these games, even the next preseason, they'll be working players in, but you still might not have the full 22 out there. And how that actually looks, and there's still players who aren't going as full tilt as others, compared to the ones who are like trying to cement their spot. Also for North Melbourne, and one question I've had a lot in the last 24 hours, and probably it might change a little because his competition for our R2 played today. But Tristan Cherry, first up, as without Goldstein anymore, looked very impressive in the ruck.
He did, and he was had the helmet on as well, which was funny to watch. But yeah, he wasn't too bad. The only problem I have with the ruck spot is, how can you not take Gawn and Grundy at like just over $1 million, which in the ruck line is unheard of in previous seasons. But it was really good, very impressive, potentially a draft option, or definitely a draft option. And yeah, he really held his own against both DC and, at the later stage of the game, Cox. Yeah, not sure about you, but could you even entertain picking him with Gawn and Grundy there?
The only way I probably could do is if for whatever reason I had like a Dawson or a Laird or Merritt, for example, in my team, and I really wanted Bont. Like Bont just becomes you have to get him in, and that was the difference between 70. If I didn't want to chop and change anything else in my team, the difference between Grundy and Cherry is the same difference between that group of players and Bont. And I saw that in a group chat I'm in today too. So a bit of that discussion. So I think it comes down to what you can do with that money, because I think because of Grundy having that buy, and we know, yes, it's going to be best 18 and we'll get a rookie score there. But if Grundy was to go, say, 105, Cherry goes 100 over the first 11 weeks and they've got the same buy in round 12, that would see them score the same amount of total points during that time. So Cherry obviously only has to go 5 points less if that's the structure you were going to go, which could potentially happen. I think Grundy's probably got a little bit more meat on the bone, but in saying that, you probably get a little bit more cash gen from Cherry if you're looking at trying to get one of them up to English at some point. So it just all depends what that 74K does to your team. And if you're happy with your team and you're just changing it for the sake of changing it, then yeah, you'd go Grundy. But if you really didn't want to change anything else, and that was the one trade or change you could make to get a superstar in, well then, yeah, I'm not completely against that move. Talking about guys who are sort of that mid-price range, and you mentioned him before, George Wardlaw only played the first half, but I thought it was pretty impressive what he did in that first half.
Yeah, it was really impressive. It backed up his best on ground performance seen by many in the North Intra Club the week before. It's just such an awkward price, though, mid to high 300s. Can you pick it, especially with so much young youth midfielders going through that North Melbourne midfield? You've got Simpkin, LDU, Sheasel might even get a run through there next season, and a couple of others like Power and Phillips. So it's a hard one to pick, especially with him only playing half the game and managed minutes, which is you probably want to see a bit more. And he's another that's not playing that round zero game that you were mentioning before. But yeah, he was very impressive, and I think there's quite a few people going there now. I think he's about 15% ownership, so one to watch in the second game for me, definitely.
Definitely. I can see him making 150K, no problems. But the problem is, again, is it going to be a slow burn to that? Is he going to gradually increase his minutes in the midfield as time goes
Mm.
on? What's their sort of setup? Are we waiting for the fact that LDU, we know his issues with his body, and at some point, hopefully not. Hopefully this is his year, but he probably goes down. Is that the moment then when Wardlaw explodes? And could you potentially, if that was to happen, where he an LDU or another North Melbourne midfielder went down, would you be more comfortable paying 50K for Wardlaw if it was a long-term injury to a North guy than starting him with a bit of up in the air, because they did have so many players that could roll through there? So that's kind of my thinking with it going, yeah, if a North player got injured and Wardlaw was on fire, then yeah, I'd rather kind of do that, because it's not like he's going to regress if it's another long-term injury. And we know he's going to get better and better. But I think it could be a bit of a case. It reminds me a lot of Matty Rowell last year, where so many people sort of started him and
Yeah,
eventually got there because of that one massive score. I think he scored like a 176,
yeah.
or something ridiculous against West Coast, where then he finally went bang, bang and went from 500 to 600,000. But it took about 10 weeks. And a lot of people had traded him out by then because they were frustrated at kind of what he was doing. So I could see that potentially with Wardlaw, but maybe not to that degree where, it's maybe 90s, 85 each week. And it grows, and then by the second half of the year, we might be seeing those sort of hundreds and becomes a bit more consistent there. Here's a guy. What's he played, like 8 or 9 games? So it's a lot
Mm.
of pressure to put on a young fella, and there's a potential where they might even rest him at different stages. North.
Yeah.
As much as I want to put hope for the North Melbourne supporters, they're not playing finals this year. It's a
Yeah.
long-term view what they're doing to their list. So why would you risk him if he needed a breather at some point throughout the season?
Well, yeah, you're completely right. And you mentioned LDU's body, and Wardlaw's body isn't that great historically either. His whole draft year, he nearly slid down the draft order a bit from hamstring injuries. His first preseason at North last year did a hammy, and then came in midway through the season, did another hammy. Uh, full preseason so far this preseason, but it's also a lingering watch hanging over him, the injury risk. But you're completely right. If LDU or someone does get injured, fingers crossed it doesn't happen, he could become a really good option. And yeah, just with that hamstring issues in the past, he could be rested again here or there because you're right, North aren't going to make finals next year. And yeah, it's another watch that we're just going to watch for this season.
Exactly. And the last thing I'll say about North Melbourne, just because this is absolutely live news, Taron Thomas just got sacked by the club then.
Oh,
So
well,
that
that's good to hear.
I think that's the problem. The bigger part to that will be it opens up a list spot. So teams
Mm,
can still sign supplement players at the moment, as we've seen with the Hawthorn the other day, adding on our 102K Backman and Phillips.
how
So
good.
there is potential there if one of those train-on players for North Melbourne could find themselves on the list, just because that opens up now. So a little bit to watch there.
Yeah.
And one other one I felt to mention, and more for, I think, draft, because he is listed as a forward spot, but Tom Powell, and I think,
Mm.
I don't think I could even entertain it for a classic point, but for somebody who's just going to slip through the radar for our draft players out there, just have him stashed away, because 32 disposals, 87% efficiency in there. And it's just another player who's been struggling with his body for a little while, had that glandular fever. So, yeah, hopefully he can get some continuity, and, yeah, a bit of a smoky for this year for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of other players as well that I think are on the radar, and it's hard to get a read at the moment, but it is like DeGoey, Ewan, Charlie Comben, I know he didn't play, Callan Dawson and Toby Pink. I think at least one or two of those guys are going to get into the north side to start the season. Who it is, we don't know yet, and it would have been really good for Comben to play yesterday, but we didn't get to see him. So, but out of them three that did play, Ewan, Dawson, and Pink, I think Ewan looked the best defensively. Didn't get much of the ball, granted, but I think out of them three, he could be winning the race. But I don't know how you read that situation, but we could potentially get some rookie options there.
I think it'll rotate. I think Nguyen looked the
Mm,
best defensively, as you said. Pink took a couple nice intercept marks. And then Killen Dawson's more that probably attacking player, which they don't really need because they've got plenty
yeah,
down there. So
absolutely.
I feel like it might be a case where a player will get 2-3 games, have a bad one, get rotated out by the next. There'll be a bit of chopping and changing this year in North Melbourne's defence, unless they
Yeah.
sign somebody in the next few days. Quickly moving on to Collingwood. We can't have a Collingwood pod without talking about the superstar, Nick Dacos. Only played the first half, 12 disposals, just pinpoint with his delivery as always.
Oh, yeah.
The big question, do you have him in your team at the moment? And and if you're not, what are you doing plan, or how's your plans to get him in?
I do at the moment, but it was I hadn't had him all preseason until that blank news, and it just got me a bit concerned on Sicily and his role going ahead in 2024. So I got him in, but then Sheasel played a blinder, and it makes you think, what can you do with that 100 to 90k more around the rest of your side? And you're talking before in terms of Jerry trying to find some cash if you needed to break glass in case of emergency type of situation. I myself will talk about a Geelong midfielder later. I had to find 70k to get him up to Flanders earlier today. So yeah, Dacos to Sheasel is one of those options, but at the moment I've got Dacos. We're talking on X today about the potential tags that he has early in the season with Rowbottom and McGuinness and potentially Winhager. But at the moment I've got him. Uh, but he can definitely come out of that side if there's a proper option like a Sheasel.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'd like the pure midfield role as well for him. Like,
Mm,
he's going to be a gun. He's going to rack up the ball, no problems. But the Pies, even with Tad Adams leaving, they do have options through there. Like, they're the premiers for a reason. They bat so deep.
yeah.
And we saw that even with Finlay McRae having an opportunity, probably
Mm,
not taking the most of it, but then a couple other players going through there and stepping up. And the one in particular, and he's frustrated a lot of players for a long time, but like, this guy's got abundance of skill. But from a Supercoach point of view, frustrating. Jordan DeGoey goes in their first half and absolutely lights the world on fire. And it wouldn't surprise me just 1 year where DeGoey just puts it all together and he's the main man in there at Collingwood. And it showed again, like yesterday. Yeah, his first half was just brilliant. He had 17 CBAs, 18 possessions in that time, laid a couple of big tackles. Yeah, it's I can see different makeups for Collingwood and them rotating through, but it wouldn't surprise me as much if DeGoey's the main man in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. DeGoey was really good, but the one thing that concerns me about him is that he's never averaged over 100 in his career, which is a concern. But we have seen players before where they just get that spike season. Ollie Wines was a consistent high 90s, low 100 until that big Brownlow season. He averaged 112. So it does happen if he can put it all
Libba
together.
last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. At 32 years old, had his career best season by some way. So DeGoey could put it all together. And you also mentioned Finlay Macrae. I was a bit concerned yesterday. No Penderbury, no Tom Mitchell, no Sidebottom. There was a few guys missing there, and he had ample opportunities, and he didn't really put it together. And it was a Pies squad that was missing pretty much half or more than half of their best 22. So I think that's a big caution for someone that's in a lot of sides at the moment. But yeah, just on DeGoey, I don't think I can do it with no over 100 average history.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised. That's the sort of thing my good buddy Abdul will probably do and get paid off as he always does, starting
Yeah,
starting somebody like that. Yeah,
yeah,
and you're right about Macrae. It's like outside of him kicking that monster goal, it was about 60 odd out.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
nice.
I it reminded me a little bit of the opposite to Thompson Dow, where Dow obviously found it a lot, but guys that come back in and just naturally going to get pushed out of that spot. So what happens to a Finlay Macrae who didn't play that well when he had the opportunity,
Yeah,
unlike Dow who did, but then players come back in. Then what's sort of his role from there? Is he coming off and is he sort of the fifth deep? Is he got to play more half forward like it's happened to his brother? Just
mm,
yeah. Where does he sit in things like at 150K? It's still a good price and that for a guy who's going to
yeah,
get opportunities. But just because now there's other forwards putting their hand up, it wouldn't surprise me if a few people cooled on him because there was actually a North player we didn't talk about, and I can't believe we actually missed that, who was at 180K,
oh
which is
yes, yep,
Lazaro. And
mm.
and I saw a few people swapping Macrae to Lazaro yesterday. A bit reactionary, but like I could see starting both. So I apologise for missing him. What did you think of Lazaro, mate?
Yeah, well, he was another that I watched the North intra the week before, and he was like, I actually really liked his game. He played a little bit of mid, predominantly high half forward though, and he started slow-ish, but he really built as the game went on. And I really like his pace. I think he's got really nice pace bursting through the centre or along the wings. Had a few inside 50 kicks, and his tackling pressure was all right as well. I'm pretty sure he pinned John Noble holding the ball at one point, and there was a couple other nice tackles.
That's
And
no
he's
easy feat because Noble's
yeah,
lightning.
yeah, yeah, and he's quite contested as well. Like he caught a couple of free kicks from going into the contest and copping high tackles. So yeah, he was really impressive. And I can't believe we missed him.
Yeah, exactly. It reminded me. I thought it was a better version of Caleb Windsor from a few days before, but very similar in the fact that they put a bit of speed into the game, got in
Yep.
there, put some pressure around the ball as well. So yeah, gives us something to think about with these 180K forwards that we already had a couple of. Just adding to that, and yeah, a little bit of rearrangement of some of these rookies potentially if they're going to get more opportunities than as we talked about in Macrae. And talking about forward opportunities, I don't think Reef McGuinness could have not done any more with his lack of the opportunities. He only got it 6 times, but kicked 3 goals, which was impressive. I thought, his leading patterns were good. He was doing everything right there, but again, it's always hard when you're playing key forward. How many times and opportunities can you get getting the ball, and it's not really super coach relevant sometimes unless they are kicking bags. But any thoughts about him, mate?
Well, all the commentary this preseason on the broadcast and on X and through everything you read about McGuinness is that he's playing off for one spot with Johnson and Kruger, and he was better than both yesterday. Kruger, it's disappointing. I was really hoping we could have got a potential R3 option there, but it's just another one we've lost. We've lost Naismith after Ryan was rocking over him. We lost Sweet after Solid dominated him. Conway was hard to get a read on today, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, it was really disappointing that Kruger was pretty shit.
Yeah.
Even with his opportunities he got, he'd mark it and he'd kick it out on the full or like a hack kick inside 50.
That was one of the worst kicks
Oh.
in footy that.
Horrendous. And yeah, McInnes, like 3 goals from 6 opportunities. I think he's got that spot sealed so far, but obviously we've got another preseason game to go.
Yeah, exactly. He's in pole position, and it takes something special from the other two to take it off him. And that's a bit about the Pies of that, and just unfortunately to our Collingwood supporter friends out there, they're not as relevant for Supercoach outside of their couple superstars. Moving on today at Tramway Oval, and it literally is Tramway Oval because there's trams going past all day. And we had the Sydney Swans taking on crosstown rivals, the GWS. What were your early thoughts of this game? I know you watched the first half. I kind of managed to get hold of the second half a bit later on. What did you see early, mate?
Oh yeah, I only watched the first half, and what really caught my eye, and again, it's something that's hurt players across the last few seasons. It was Isaac Heaney, and he was getting a lot of mid minutes. When he was in the midfield, he was rolling back or playing high half forward. He played a bit of everywhere, and he was really solid to my eye. Another that was really impressive, but is a bit of an awkward price, was Chad Warner. He kicked 2 goals early in the first half, had a lot of the ball, looked really good, and easily the Swans' best midfielder. From the half I watched, Grundy and Briggs battled it out, and I kind of had the battle going towards Briggs, although once I turned it off, it looks like Grundy got a bit of an edge after that. But they were probably the ones that stood out. How about yourself?
Yeah, I thought the Grundy Briggs battle was actually really good. It wouldn't surprise me if Kieran Briggs adds him into that sort of the 4 best rucks in the league. Sean Darcy's body seems to leave himself down way too much. So, it wouldn't be, Gorn, English, Grundy, and Briggs. And I thought, it was a great battle, though. It's always funny with the rucks because even in these match sims, they really do battle each other. Still, they always want to be the top dog, and neither of them took a backward step against each other. So, it probably, we were talking about Cherry before. It actually made me want to lock in Grundy even more after that because, he'd worked in the game. It's always going to take a little bit of time with a new player, but I thought, the battle between those two, and I'm sure he's probably still got a really good score out of it against one of the better young rucks in the competition. Completely right about Heaney. He's probably the ultimate burn man for people, so it will be a hard, but with the lack of forward options, especially with Cal Mills out early, he can definitely play that role up further up the ground. And the fact that they now got more options up forward probably gives him the opportunity to roll both ways. Jordan, we played out on the wing and midfield, but could go forward if he really needs to. Taylor Adams is there. He can do it all. And they've obviously got, your McDonald's, Amartys, Papleys. They've got so many different options that can either float through the midfield or, set up their forward line. So I could see Horse putting Heaney a little bit more through that midfield. So definitely something to consider if you haven't completely written him off your list. James, I thought Jordan did everything I was probably expecting from the first game. I haven't had him in. Definitely somebody else could have battling between that Billings Harm spot. I think I've got room for one of them. I didn't mind Billings' game the other day. I thought Jordan, in a way, was kind of similar. He did good work inside and outside, but do I need to see him get more of it when the likes of Goulden and their full complement are in? Because once Goulden came in onto that second half, Jordan did fall away, and that's just my worry about that. I still think, what's his probably ceiling in there? Is he going to be that sort of 70, 75 guy, or can he push into 85, which is what we probably want, 80, 85 at that price? Because I just mentioned Billings, Harms, Fife, they're all in that price range. And I think one of them's going to go, up that mark this year, but it's just a question of which one.
Yeah, well, at the moment you mentioned them, I've got Billings and Harms both in my team, and they're both cheaper than Jordan at the moment. In the half that I watched Jordan, he started slowish, but then he really built into the game, playing mostly wing. But you made a great point about once Gordon came in. Obviously, I didn't watch the second half, but it sounded like he did drop off a little bit. And when you consider that Adams wasn't playing either, does both Goulden and Adams and Parker and Warner and all them playing full time in that midfield or full time game time, does it push Jordan out to that wing or even more minutes on the bench or a sub which he was spending most of the time at his Melbourne over the past 2 years in a sub vest? So that's my only issue with it. I think he can get 75 to 80 average if he's got that right role and that game time that's needed. But that sub risk really, really worries me. And I don't think we got enough of the sample size today with the Golden only playing a half, Adams out. So it's going to be a watch in the next game and definitely opening around as well.
Yeah, for sure. The other one from the Swans who I've had in nearly since the game's opened is Matt Roberts. And I actually like the fact that he was playing as that back pocket type just because it actually gives him a role. I was probably going to be more worried if he was in that midfield mix because of just the amount of players, as we've already mentioned, that can go through there. So at 150K, I don't mind it because if they needed probably a back pocket, and if he could sit there, and even if he's scoring 50s from there, I think that's serviceable enough. And the potential, what could happen if he was one of those rookies you wanted to hold on a little bit longer, he could potentially pick up defender status, which might come in handy as somebody we could maybe able to hold up to the buys just because of the lack of sort of rookie options we have there. So I actually didn't mind that role.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like we've spoken about that midfield mix of the Swans and the defender mid DPP would be really handy, I reckon, especially when you've got Curtin and Dacos as options back in defence. And there's a few others as well that escape my mind at the moment. But yeah, he looked really good from what I saw. He's a great size for a young player. Like he's quite built. And yeah, I didn't mind that role. Can he fit in there with like Lloyd and there's Campbell there as well, who's used by foot today and was a bit average from what I saw. But yeah, you're definitely right. I think in terms of role, he's more of a chance to play than midfield down back.
Yeah, well, I think maybe it could be Roberts and Lloyd, and that allows Campbell and in particular the Lizard to roam off and
Yeah.
do their things. And I don't know if you saw that, but the Lizard's little run today where he took on about half the GWS team and set up a ball into the forward 50. Definitely a highlight reel, Blakely, but he's I think if they could set up like that, there's potential for Roberts to fit into that back line. Talking about also rookies, there's a GWS guy who I know a few people are like, oh, we've got to keep this guy quiet. I must admit he's in my team at the moment. But Jacob Weir just patrolled up and down one of those wings with Finn Callahan out injured. Is this going to be another GWS rookie who's going to frustrate us after 3 rounds and he gets dropped? Or do you think this is a chance for Jacob Weir to make his mark on the Giants this year?
Well, GWS it potentially could be, one of the most frustrating teams historically, but that was mostly with Leon Cameron at the helm. But yeah, I actually really liked his game on the wing. He pushed forward in the first quarter, or maybe it was the second, and kicked a goal. He was pushing back a lot, and he's someone that's been around for like a few years now. It's not a first-year player or a second-year player, and yeah, he's had a bit of bad luck with injuries, concussion, whatnot, and yeah, he has been around abouts. I saw the first half and was pretty impressed by what I saw, and then I was even more impressed when I looked on Twitter and saw he had 11 disposal last quarter. So definitely one to watch, and again, another one that we've got opening round to watch as well. And if he's named in that, that's real footy. Then he's a massive option at 123K. But yeah, I was really impressed by him from what I saw, and someone that's been around the system for a couple of years, I think it benefits him.
Yeah, for sure. And I like the kind of rookies from these two teams better than I do the premiums, just because they've got that awkward round 3 bye. Yeah, they get a price rise potentially or a price drop, but it means a premium player that won't be playing in round 3 for you. And we're already a lot of teams looking at Flanders just because of the lack of depth in the forward line. It does make it hard to pick the following names, and I'm going to rattle them all off. So we've talked about Gordon coming on in the second half and doing what he normally does and just dominate. But for the GWS Giants, we have Canelio, Kelly, Green, Whitfield, and Himmelberg. And they all, probably Kelly didn't light up. I thought Canelio was probably the best of the midfielders. Green definitely went much better in the second half. I thought early on, probably getting a little bit of attention. We're talking about from row bottom around the stoppages, but he still would have had at least 30 touches, does what Tom Green does. Himmelberg in that half-back role, just loves zoning off as the third defender, taking intercept marks. And Lockie Whitfield, talking about Burnman, but back in his comfortable role at half-back with, I think, Isaac Cumming out injured. Did what he did, racks up possessions and uses the ball nicely. Can you start any of these guys considering the fact that they do have that bye?
I don't think I can. There's a lot of other premiums that have a early buy that I've got my eye on a bit more. Green was probably the one that I was looking at, especially with North and West Coast in round 1 and 2. But yeah, Whitfield also, was on my radar due to how he finished last season. He actually finished last season pretty strong. Can't remember off the top of my head, but it was above 100 average over the last 7 or 8 games. Can't remember exactly, but he looked really good today from what I saw. And it's something to, again, consider. Like, what does Dacos to Whitfield get you in terms of the cash for around the ground? Like, that's a pretty significant price change. But yeah, in terms of Kelly, he's a typical burn man. He's probably the third string mid at the moment. Canelio best on from what I saw, and yeah, Green started really slow in that first half, and I was a bit surprised to hop on X after the game and see he got 30 plus disposals. So
I think that's what
I don't
Green
know.
just does now. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah,
He'll just find
absolutely.
a way to rack up 30 touches. He's the one that I want more than any of them.
Yeah,
But my original plan was, do I start one of these Giants and move them to Walsh? And then that's been thrown out the door because
yeah.
obviously Walshy's injured himself. So I've got question marks about going that whole strategy. And you're right. I think it was round 17 onwards. So that's 7 rounds last year.
Yep.
Whitfield went 107 during that time.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he's definitely value for
yeah,
sure. And we know what he's done in the past. So it's not like he can't do it. So it is a bit of food for thought. It's annoying with this early buy because I feel like I'd have so many GWS players in my side this season. There's
yeah.
so much value there, but just frustrating that it is what it is with the fixture. The last game today, well, there will be a game starting soon with the Queensland Derby, but Carlton played Geelong. Now, the only thing, I watched the opening 30 seconds of this game,
Yep.
and I am so frustrated because the one of the very few players that I'm like, not picking, refuse to pick, as much as my co-host Chris argues me with this, is I'm not going anywhere near Cam Guthrie. I'll let you guys all make the mistake on that. And 7 seconds in the game, grabs the ball out of the center, bang, ping, hamstring, see you later. Unbelievable. And I think yourself, mate, might have had him at M6. And I know a lot of people had him at M6. Am I right there, mate? M6, you had him?
Yeah, I was one of the ones that was actually really bullish on him, and there's a few on X at the moment giving me shit because I tweeted last night, "Can't wait to watch Cam Guthrie tomorrow," and it did not end well. Literally, he started really well because he got the first clearance, bursted from the clearance, kicked it, and then pulls up and injures his quad or hammy. I'm not sure which one it is at the moment, but yeah, I had to find 70K to go him up to Flanders. Pretty much 5 minutes after that incident, and yeah, for someone like you that was going to fade him, it is potentially disappointing because people could have got sucked in and burnt. But I was really keen on him. I think he was, in my eyes, that best stepping stone option to get up around 7 games, 8 games into Merritt, who starts really slow traditionally.
Yeah.
But yeah, had to change my plan.
I get the players, and I understand he was probably going to be their M1. Um,
Yeah.
but it was just the worry about the age and the injury history. It's a bit like my thoughts on Elliot Yeo. And I'm really hoping a
Mm,
few people just pivoted that because they're not that much
yeah.
difference in price and have gone, oh, yeah, I'll just get Yo in now. I
Yeah.
can see the same thing. Like I thought that'd be Guthrie. He'll come out, go 100 to 100, bang, hammy, see you later.
Yeah.
And I don't like wishing that on any player. You want to see the best players running around, but
Mm,
this is what happens when people get older, and we all understand that. And unfortunately, so hopefully he recovers from himself and gets back in for the Cats. But because he's not there, I think that probably pushes Tanner Bruin maybe nearly up to their M1, M2. So there's I didn't get obviously see a lot of the game, so I might hand this over to you, mate, and tell us what you saw of the Cats.
Yeah, well, Tanner Bruin is someone that I saw a lot of people get burnt by last season when he had that, I think 4 DPP was a bit cheap. Someone that I don't think I'll go near, but I think this Guthrie injury is going to be massive for Jai Clark. He played a lot of minutes today and he was getting the ball regularly, but his ball use can be a bit better, and he also looks like he struggled a bit under pressure. A lot of the time, looked rushed, fumbled a bit. But in terms of the role and the eye test, he got a lot of minutes, played a lot of midfield, and that Guthrie injury does absolute wonders for him.
Yeah,
But yeah,
for sure. And it's, I think a few people were debating on which sort of way to go with a couple of these 123K rookies when you especially, or like this, I think most people have McKercher and Sanders locked in.
yeah,
And if you are going deep and then you're M7, M8, it doesn't leave a lot of room if you're looking at, say, a Weir, a Sharp, or even one of those forward mid loopholes there, because people like to obviously chop and change, and switch players around, and then it's
mhm,
before we even Roberts, as we talked about before. So I think it did wonders. It'd be great to see what happens now that going to next game that Geelong now know Guthrie won't be there. What's their starting mix in that
yeah,
midfield, and then how much time Clark actually now gets around that
yeah.
ball.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping it opens up a spot for Mana because the big concern was he didn't get minutes until 15 minutes into the third or around that mark. And when he was on, he looked pretty good, but obviously it's a massive concern when, they already had a few out and he doesn't get any minutes until the third quarter. Uh, does the Guthrie injury change that? Maybe. But yeah, as you said, it's going to be a really big watch next week to see what that new midfield mix is going to be. I think Dangerfield didn't start the first quarter, so maybe he comes in to that main mix, but he also played a bit of forward as well. And then, as we were mentioning before, it was really annoying because it was hard to get a gauge on Toby Conway because he rucked the first and the third quarter, and then Stanley rucked the third and the fourth. Sorry, the second and the fourth. And how do you possibly get a gauge on something like that when they both looked pretty good? Dare I say it, Stanley looked even better than Conway did. Can they play on the both play on the same side? Maybe, but it's a big concern at that R3 spot.
It is, and the problem I have with that, and it's no different than how they use blitz halves or whatever
Yeah.
other ruck option. But Stanley could potentially start forward, or blitz halves start forward, or wing, or whatever they want to do with him. Conway starts ruck. Moment, third quarter, and they haven't had an injury, and they want some more speed in the game. Conway gets subbed out, and they bring in somebody with a little bit more leg speed to run out the
Mm,
match, and then they can
yeah.
throw Blixarves into the ruck to finish out the match. So, as much as I think he will potentially be their R1 to start off with, I can see this scenario playing out, and it's just going to frustrate us as coaches, because any points that he looks like he's gaining is just going to be snuffed out with that sub.
Yeah, that's a great call. And the sub risk is such a big thing. Like especially with those taller players. And could we see it potentially with some of the key defensive rookies that we get this year, and Gibkiss and Reed? They need a bit more leg speed. Do they get subbed out? And you're absolutely right. Conway's probably the biggest threat of all time to get subbed out this season with Stanley there. They also have like Hawkins who rucks in the forward 50. SDK can go in there sometimes, and as you said, Blitzar. So that is a massive or something to watch. And yeah, a concern for me at 180k. I don't think I could do it personally.
Yeah, and it's hard because, as you said about Naismith, some people were saying the other day that they thought Naismith looked better and it'll be the lock in, and I was like, "There's no way." Like the Tigers will definitely go Samson Ryan
Yeah,
first option. So I think the only way they're getting in is if Lynch doesn't get up and Nank doesn't get up, and then they need to play Samson Ryan forward. That's the only way we're seeing Naismith. So yeah, it makes it hard because there's not a lot of options at that R3. And I think a lot of people like yourself and even myself were hoping that Conway would be the man. But yeah, I have serious doubts of spending 180k, and yeah, want a much cheaper option if that's available, because as we've talked before, that cash can be very important. From the Blue Baggers' point of view, there was one notable missing player, and something has just come out from the club about Zach Williams potentially might not even be available at the start of the season, depending on what their medical staff decide to do with him. So that could be a concern. That could be also a positive, because if he doesn't play round 0, we might be able to get a couple of looks at him before he gets a price rise. But apart from Williams, what did you see from the Blue Baggers today?
I think Chara was best on for Carlton in the midfield. I really liked his game, and he would be one of the ultimate pod moves in that midfield if you were to go him. I don't think I could personally. Cripps was all right, kicked a goal or two. Doherty looked good in the midfield and a little bit off half back. Another one that I don't think you could pick. Ashton Moyer, actually, their pick 29, I think, 39 last year. He kicked 2 goals, looked pretty good. Ed Kerno gave him a bit of a pump up on the commentary, saying that Charlie really likes him kicking to him inside 50 because he can kick both left and right foot and is quick with his decisions. Is he someone that potentially gets in that side? It's going to be hard with the likes of Owies, Motlop, and even Fantasia played today. Granted,
How
he
did he
didn't look
look,
that
mate?
good. Oh,
For
he
for
didn't
all
look that
for all the
great.
frustrated Port Adelaide and Essendon supporters out there, what
Oh,
did
yeah.
Azario did? Azario.
Yeah, I don't think he was that great. He had an early shot at goal after. I think it was Cripps gave one off to him, and he missed it. And there wasn't much after that. Motlop was comfortably better, so was Moyer. I don't think he'll play early, and at 170k, you wouldn't go anywhere near it, I don't think.
The Blues have had a habit of playing some of these small forwards early in the season and giving them opportunities. And
Yeah.
Jack Martin still seems a bit of time away at the moment. So potentially there is a spot there. So Ashton Moore is one to definitely watch.
Yeah,
Because that's all
definitely.
we need. All we need is another forward rookie.
Yeah.
Because the frustrating thing is we've got no forward premiums and all forward rookies, and we've got no defender rookies. It would be nice if one
Yeah.
of these defender rookies decide to stand out.
Oh, absolutely.
Did Billy Wilson play? Because obviously I've heard a lot, and his percentage was quite high. So I don't know if he was out there.
No, I didn't see any of Billy Wilson. In terms of the Carlton rookies, it probably was Moyer that looked the best. O'Sullivan played for the Cats down
Yep.
back, and he didn't look too bad. He played the whole game. I think he came off the bench early in the first quarter, and he did some nice things. But 160k is probably a bit too much, especially if the guys we could potentially get down there. But yeah, no Billy Wilson cited for me today.
Yep. No, that's because I think he's still in 7% of teams. So it was
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know if that's just people. I would think if you're just putting him in there, you just get the 102 guy. So obviously there's a few Blue supporters that have watched him over the preseason, what they saw. But yeah, this is where it really matters. I think that's it from the Blues. They're a bit like Collingwood in a way, where a lot of their good players are maxed out, and a lot of the rookies aren't going to get opportunities just because where they are on the ladder. Which is natural and obviously frustrating for two of the big supporter bases, because they like to have their players in to support, but that's just the way it goes now. So, I think that's about it from those 3 games. We've got obviously the Suns and the Lions going to be kicking off soon, and then we're into the footy again tomorrow before we get into the official practice matches next week. Once again, mate, where do everybody find you out there in the social media world?
Well, I'm just on X at JG2325, and then you can find Supercoach Hub on YouTube and also Spotify. Uh, the link to the Discord is also in the descriptions for both of those platforms. And you can also find them on X at Supercoach_Hub. And as you said, Brisbane and Gold Coast tonight, it's going to be interesting to see how Dimmer's game plan is transferred from Richmond to the Suns. Does he go a different route, or does he stick to what he did at the Tigers? We'll never know until tonight, and a few to watch tonight as well. So that should be exciting.
Definitely. No, it is exciting time of the year because there's an opportunity to see some of these young fellas that we sort of hear the name, read out draft, and it's very good because when they're cheap, this is what I love about Supercoach, because there'd be a lot of players that would never get focused without them, and you kind of do when they've been in your team, have that little eye on their career as they keep going on. So it does have a good positive. The negative is obviously, your poor Relton Roberts types and stuff like that who play one game and disappear and they become memes for the rest of their life. But, hopefully it's more the other way than the negative. But appreciate you coming on, mate. It's always enjoy talking footy. And, as I said earlier, any chance you guys get to listen to what you're doing on especially X, and the great work you've been following up in every match sim has been impressive, mate. So I do appreciate that, and definitely would love to catch up soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been good fun.
Thanks, mate. And to all our Supercoach Insider community, always continue to check out all the content we're putting out, and we will talk soon. Thanks, guys.